Heartily welcome all of you that are joining. I'm not sure how many we are. 89 people joining this webinar from around the globe. If you need French translation, you put the button interpretation and you will be listening to our translator Tamar instead of the one speaking here. Hope that works for all of you. You are so welcome. It would have been great to meet physically, but we cannot. So we thought it was a good idea to meet like this, to introduce what we have been working on for a long time, our next strategic plan. But before we go into that, I just want to say that the chat is open during this session, and we welcome you to write in French or in English, and we will, by the end, summarize the questions that we have got and the comments, and we will bring it up. Everything that we have time to bring up, we will bring up. Otherwise, we will reply to you that ask questions personally. Also, I want to mention that this webinar is recorded, so hope that is okay with all of you. We want to make sure that people that cannot attend now can listen afterwards. My name is Niklas Lindgren. I'm the director of PMU, and I am so happy to be with some of my colleagues in the office today. We have been out of the office for a long time, but now we are here. Our first 5-year plan was written in 2010, and then we developed the concept so that we launched a compass to 2020 in 2016, and now we take the next step. Our plan was, of course, to launch this compass earlier. 2021, already 9 months have passed. But due to the pandemic, we decided to postpone the process a bit to try to understand what is happening in the world and how do we need to adjust. But we began working already according to the compass, so we didn't lose time. We still believe in the core values of partnership. I want to stress this. We believe in local ownership, but as part of being partners, we think it's important that we as PMU are clear on what we aim for, how we work, and why. As you will hear today, we focus on 3 strategic areas that we find very important. It's gender equality, it's peace and democratic culture, and it's environment and climate. And 2 of them you recognize from our last 5-year plan. But the 3rd one we add now. We will get back to why. This does not mean that we will not emphasize and work on health, livelihoods, education, other things. They are crucial for people to get out of poverty. But we still believe that those 3 thematic areas need to be highlighted. Without them, there will be without gender equality, there will be no development. Without peace, there will be no development. And I think we all have understood the importance of working on climate change, climate adaptation, and these kind of perspectives due to what we have been facing this year all over the world. In addition, we will also continue to focus on what it means to be a faith-based actor working rights-based, and the role of religion and faith in development processes. But we will get back to that. The following minutes, you will listen to some of my colleagues that will be introduced as we get going. We will try to highlight some things that we are writing about in this compass. First, I want to say a few words on our identity and our mission that is part of the compass. We are faith-based. Sorry, now we have some technical problems. Okay, can we ask everyone to mute so that we don't have disturbance when it comes to sound? Is that okay, Michael? Good? Good. So when it comes to identity and mission, we are faith-based. But we work rights-based. I'm sorry, we still have some technical problems to solve, but we continue. We have a strong belief in that all humans are created in the image of God and that they therefore have a value. We believe that faith and religion are fundamental parts of society and everyday life for most people in the world. We therefore think that faith and religion has to be, I mean, it is affecting societal processes all over the world, and therefore it has to be brought or taken into consideration when we work. We believe that FBOs, faith-based organizations, and religious leaders are important, and we try to have a holistic view on well-being of people, bringing in also spiritual perspectives. When it comes to the rights-based approach, this is fundamental to us, to be working in a non-discriminative way, making sure that people can participate, making sure that there is transparency in all process, and making sure that people that are responsible are shouldering their responsibility. And this means that we have to focus on the most vulnerable, but we also have to focus on the people in deep poverty, but not only them, but we need to build capacity both in the rights holders and duty bearers. We are belonging to a broad network of Pentecostal movements, and that is part of who we are and what we do, but we are working in a very broad network globally. We believe in long-term partnerships. We believe that we are building something together, and we try in this compass to make sure that we take away the dichotomy between North and South. We would like to see that we are in this together. We face global challenges that we need to do something about, both in Sweden and in the world, and in the countries where we work. So we try to break down that wall. Now, I want to introduce Leif Newman, who is the head of program, who would like to share something on what we write about how we view the world today. Welcome, Leif.
Thank you very much, Niklas. Yes, a few words on the context and where we find ourselves as an organization, and also looking a little bit at the future. And we all know that we are in a world that is changing ever faster, and that we need to understand the context around us. Of course, the COVID pandemic has added a new layer to our understanding and has impacted in many, many ways, as you know. And especially those of you who live in the global south have been affected tremendously. I'm going to mention a little bit on 7 different areas that we have identified as especially important when it comes to our understanding of our world and the context around us. And the first is, of course, on poverty. And after quite successful years where we actually have seen extreme poverty going down gradually over time, the COVID pandemic has changed that. So we actually have huge setbacks. There are World Bank estimates that maybe around 150 million people are thrown back into extreme poverty, which is really so sad and something that we need to look at. And this is only for 2021 alone. It's also important to say that when we look at poverty, we look at it broadly and more holistically, looking not only at food, but economic, social, cultural, spiritual. The second thing I would like to mention, which is, Niklas mentioned that as well, which is one of our new priority areas, even though we have worked on this issue for quite long, is the issue of climate and environment. And I think we all know that this is threatening the whole existence of humanity in the world. In addition to that, we have the issue of biodiversity loss, which maybe not so many are aware of. But I just read the other day that around 30% of the global tree species, the number of species of trees in the world, are actually risking extinction. Thirdly, conflicts, humanitarian crises and refugees. We have many endless and forgotten conflicts. Less funding is available. We see an emerging trend of nationalist and racist movements, even though the 2030 agenda brings some hope. On the issue of democracy, which would be the fourth area, which is also a priority area for us. And we are mainly focusing on democratic culture and democratic governance. We see that shrinking space is a growing problem in many countries, and the space for people to speak openly, independently, without fear is shrinking and becoming less. And we have more and more of authoritarian regimes that use this as a tool to secure their own power. And even we have seen that the corona pandemic has been used as excuses for repression. And linked to that, we also see oppression of minorities, including religious minorities. The next area I would like to quickly mention is on gender equality, and Niklas mentioned that already. This is really a priority area for us. We see that patriarchal structures prevail, and we need to continue to break those walls. There are estimates that 700 million girls and women so far have been forced into child marriage, and that 200 million young girls have been subjected to genital mutilation. So it's a huge problem. And women often have less access to schooling, paid work, leadership roles, etc. And Corona has also had a huge impact on this, of course. My sixth area I would like to mention is digitalization. We see that access to internet is spreading fast. And there's a lot of positive things linked to that. And we also see the fact that we can have these types of webinars was probably not as easily achieved 5 years ago. And more people have access to information. It has improved communication. There is less travel needed because we can meet digitally. But there are also negative aspects of this that we need to look into. The issue of natural resources, serious environmental degradation issues linked to mining for precious minerals, human rights issues linked to that. Energy consumption is another area that we need to look at. And of course, the fact that many governments are investing in digital technology for increased surveillance of people, and also suppression and control of people. And the final area in this is also that this disinformation is also a risk. There is a lot of fake news around that can manipulate us. And the final area to mention here is the emergence of new social movements that we need to look into. PMU is a formal organization, of course, and with all its structure. But what we see is an emergence of more and more informal movements. I think no one has escaped Fridays for Future, for instance, the youth movement for climate change, the Me Too movement, and so forth. And we think that we need to look at ways of connecting and interacting with different informal movements than that emerge. So with those few words on the world around us, Niklas, I hand back to you.
Great. Thank you, Leif. We try to look into and understand the world we are facing, and we need to do something about. So thank you, Leif. Now, Mikael Jägerskog. Michael, we want to listen to you. You are the head of policy learning and advocacy here. And we want to listen to you on our view on change and why we focus as we focus. So welcome.
Thank you, Niklas, and good to be with you all. In the compass, I will point you to a yellow page. So if you look at the PDF that was sent, you will find a page where we try to summarize important things relating to change. How does change happen? We have loads of different both experiences and views on that, and we can't cover it all in this in some short sentences. But here you have some of the key points that we identify in programs and together with partners. So we're talking about human rights perspective, and we have already been touching on that, but also how to work holistically and joining hands, networking and such. On that page, we also had added one model, and the model is called the iceberg model. I think a lot of you that have participated in different seminars or meetings with PMU have seen that model, so it's not new. And there are many models out there, but we have chosen to add this model in the compass because it points to something, and that's that we also, when we talk about change and changing our societies, we also need to look into structures that needs to be changed in order to also see a real change in our societies, and also what kind of culture is uplifting negative structures. So have a look on that model. A number of persons at PMU are very open to also discuss the model if you want to know more about that model. In the compass, we have some thematic areas, focus areas, and what does that mean? The last compass, we had two thematic areas and one more ideological, theological area that we were focusing on. And what we mean with that is that we want to create space for that in our dialogues, in our meetings, in our media work and such. So it means different things for different parts of the organization. And we had two focuses at that time. This time we have three. So we remain with the focus on peace and democratic culture. We see that our partners are you and we are investing in areas where we see a lot of conflict, and we think we have a long-term commitment there. I think we can contribute and do more. And we also continue with the gender equality work, and that has been going on for many years, and I assume that we need to continue with that for years to come, unfortunately. So that is a second area of work. We remain our focus. And the third area is what Leif also was touching on, climate and environment. It's not a new topic for PMU in a sense, but we have not had that many programs and projects throughout the years dealing with that kind of perspective. So that will be the third pillar when it comes to thematic areas. And what we say is that these thematic focuses, they are crucial, even if you work with something else. If you work with education or health, there are perspectives from these focuses that are important for any area of work. So both a thematic perspective and a more of a mainstreaming perspective that really links to everything that we are doing. And when we're talking about themes and thematic areas, we're not thinking of them like in silos, that, okay, now we are working only with gender equality, but how does that intersect and is connected with other areas of work? How is the climate change affecting situation for women? How does that affect a conflict? So it's not separate tracks, it's more intersected, interconnected. And we want you to also have a look on the compass, and please contact our advisors within this field. One of the meaning having a thematic focus is also that we have staff that really develop expertise in that field. So we have one for gender equality, one for peace work, and one for environmental climate issues. So please feel free to contact them. And yeah, that's a summary of what we're doing.
Great, thank you, Michael. Now to the programs we run. One thing that we really want to focus on is to see how the short term and the long term interacts and how we can bridge the gap between humanitarian assistance and also development. First, Anna Maria Drew, I would like to welcome you. You are the deputy head of program, but also working with our programs in Asia. So share some on what we have felt is important when it comes to our development programming for the 5 years to come. So welcome.
Thank you. Yes, if you're sitting around the world, if any of you work in the projects or programs that we support, and the people working in our program department are probably your first-hand contacts at PMU. Our team, together with our controllers, manage the entire cycle of funding, including applications and reporting and evaluations and so on. And we also are responsible for the contact with our Swedish partner churches. So in this new compass that I hope you all have had a glance at page 22, you find a section called PMU support to long-term development interventions. And this section summarizes the big picture of what we focus on in the program department. And if you read there, you can also read more about our priorities for the next 5 years. So one of our key objectives in all what we do is to support all our partner organizations to grow stronger, and become more independent and relevant development actors and agents for change. We want to see you excel in supporting people and communities to raise themselves out of poverty, vulnerability, and discrimination. And here in Sweden, we are of course far away, and we don't always understand the width and the depth of all you do and the situation that you work in. So we fully acknowledge you as the experts. But saying that, we also believe that we have a role to play, not just in terms of bringing the funds and ensuring accountability to funders, but also in being a dialogue partner, observer, and at times an advocate who can help you grow stronger in whatever is your mission, and at times also voice your concerns at our end of the world. So if you would ask any of the Pmu partners in Asia, who is this Anna Maria? They will probably tell you that she likes to ask a lot of questions. And sometimes this is linked to what I mentioned in the compass and things that my colleagues have mentioned. Maybe I ask, how about the young people's rights? Have you thought about the gender aspects? How do you ensure non-discrimination and participation of all? Can you please explain a bit more about the how? How did the change happen? What is your theory of change? And the part of the rationale for this and all these questions that I continuously ask is, of course, that I need to be able to explain your work in reports and in proposals to our donors. But that is only half of the story. It's also because we believe that by asking these questions and having this dialogue, we might play a small part in pushing you to think of new ways to address old or new problems. So if you read this section in the compass at page 22, you will also see that we base some of this on the learning and the reviewing of all the results and reporting that you have done to us through the years. So we hope to also bridge some of the learnings from one part of the world to another. And then, of course, we don't always or only care about the work you carry out in communities. We also want to support all our partners to build strong, well-functioning organizations. From experience, we know that effective organizations often have strong administrative and organizational structures, independent strategic planning processes, well-functioning monitoring systems, which promotes learning, innovation, and adaptability, and a well-functioning board and governing system, which ensures accountability. No one is perfect, and all organizations, including Pmu, has its flaws. But as long as we keep ourselves from stagnating, as long as we are curious and open-minded, honest, willing to learn and adapt and keep ourselves and our organizations moving forward, I believe we can do this world a little better. So I want to use this opportunity to end by saying that we've been given a little bit of time and funding. So let's help each other to make the best use of this and to be good steward of what has been given to us to serve others. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Sorry, can you come back, Anna Maria? Just you work with the long-term development processes, but there is also a bridge to the short-term needs and when there are calamities or humanitarian crisis. how would you, from your perspective, view that link to the short term?
Yes, that's a very interesting area, which is a lot more urgent today. We talk about the nexus, or we talk about building resilience. We want to help communities all around the world to face the changes that are coming fast, especially linked to climate change, but also other things. So in that way, we hope to work very closely with our humanitarian team, but also with all of you to find ways to help communities to adapt and find new ways of facing future challenges.
Great.
Yes.
You were not prepared for that question, but thank you. I just want to mention that this is a key area within our compass, that we try to bridge this gap. We try to learn together, both from the humanitarian perspective and from the development perspective. How can we do this in a better way together to face the challenges that are there? Madeleine, you are responsible for keeping together our humanitarian work. And I want to invite you to say something on the key things we want to highlight in the compass when it comes to humanitarian work and the situation in the world when it comes to humanitarian needs. So welcome to share with us.
Thank you. We are on a journey together with our partners, and the humanitarian work of PMU has grown exponentially over the last 5 years. We went from an approximate of $1.6 million in actual expenditure in 2016 to a record high of $4.5 million in 2020. As such, we have also been able to assist more and more people in need of humanitarian assistance, and I'm happy to say that beneficiary numbers have gone up by more than 200%, while also including repeated support and support through multiple sectors. From this journey, we have tried to capture learnings for the new humanitarian strategy that was recently adopted and is linked to the compass. We see that some of the key factors in, let us call it, the success that we have had together with US partners is that our partners are being called what is called first-line responders, often being there before, during, and after a disaster hits. The long-term community engagement, providing access to hard-to-reach areas, and often blazing the trail for larger actors to gain local access as an effectiveness. And of course, the excellent knowledge of the context, as well as your ability to pick up on early warnings. We see all this as a huge benefit and added value in our work, and this has also been confirmed by some of the back donors that we have. In the upcoming strategy years of 2021 to 2025, we see a need to continue our growth and expansion, and we intend to materialize this through increased institutional funding, as well as increased efforts through our own funding. We also see that this will lead into entering new partnerships, both with potential donors and new implementing partners. These partners might be found even outside of the existing PMU regions, and we might also respond in areas and countries where we do not have development cooperation if we deem it strategically important. Some of our main priorities going forward will be to continue enhancing implementing partners' capacities in responding to humanitarian crisis. Many of you have already taken one of our CHS trainings on the core humanitarian standard. And while still building on that as our basis and our framework for the humanitarian work, we will also put an increased focus on MEAL, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, gender, and cash-based assistance, or other topics that are relevant for you as partners. We will also continue focusing on the Nexus programming that Anna-Maria was mentioning, and we will do that in close coordination and cooperation with our colleagues in the development section. The aim with this is to integrate the development and humanitarian project design to work towards joint goals. And when appropriate, we can also add in peace building and thus work on what is called the triple nexus. Our third priority is to expand our funding base. We will explore options to sustain continued CEDA support on the humanitarian side. And we will also explore possibilities of implementing ECHO projects, following ECHO granting us to be a certified partner for another 7 years. And finally, we will continue to support partners working in so-called forgotten crises around the world. Many disasters, as you know, never make the global news headlines, and they may be sidestepped in the media, in fundraising, in advocacy, in response plans. And we are proud to have had great confidence from our back donors in the previous years and for receiving large grants. But we cannot and we will not forget the importance of the small-scale humanitarian interventions that might look trivial in the perspective of global humanitarian response plans, but that are also important for the affected populations. Our work is based on the humanitarian principles, and we work under the premise of leave no one behind. And this and the success that we have had in recent years would not have been possible without our great implementing partners around the world. And I want to say thank you for the last 5 years, both on behalf of myself and the rest of the humanitarian unit. And we look forward to continue working with you in the coming 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was about what we focus on in the programming in the countries concerned where we work. We are in a bit over 30 countries with programs. But I began to say something about the dichotomy or the divide between the North and the South. And when working on our strategic plan, we felt this is very important, considering the way the 2030 agenda and the SDGs is formulated. We face global challenges and we need to act together, both here in Sweden and around the world. So we invested a bit more time than last time in trying to find the links and trying to describe in a better way what is needed to be done in Sweden in order for change to take place. What kind of activities do we need to work on, and how is that connected to what you as our local partners are doing? We come as PMU from a rich history. I mean, we were founded by the Pentecostal churches in Sweden in order to attract funding for the work that was already taking place in many countries, in health, in education, in livelihoods, in trying to meeting the needs of people, but also fighting for the rights of people. And the role, of course, of the Swedish churches in this process of change onwards, as it was in the history, the role of the Swedish churches is very, very important. And in our work in Sweden, we try to connect more clearly now than before and try to find new ways of working together. We have painted a picture of the future where we want to be in 15 years as a Pentecostal movement of Sweden. And in that picture, we say that we want to be standing firmly on the side of the people that are in vulnerability and being oppressed around the world. And we want to do that together as a movement. So as I welcome my colleague Christine Elmqvist, who is working with our advocacy work, trying to affect politicians and people in power. That's one part. And then we will listen to Johanna, who's heading the department for fundraising and communications. But I really want to emphasize that we try to find the links between here and there, and bridging that gap. So Christine, welcome to share with us, and then we will listen to Johanna.
Thank you. Yes, so I will share a little bit about our advocacy work. And advocacy is about influencing people, policies, exercise of power, and structures. And we want decisions made that benefit the most vulnerable, and we want unjust structures challenged, and changed. In our advocacy work in Sweden, we aim to emphasize the importance of listening to local voices from different contexts, but also how to understand how faith and religion can influence social development. And for the coming period, we want to prioritize the following. We want to conduct advocacy work within the framework of PMU's thematic areas, and this work will be based on the voices and perspectives of our partners. Secondly, we want to highlight the role of religion and the significance of religious actors in development cooperation. Thirdly, we want to urge politicians to take wise decisions for global justice in relevant policy areas, such as trade policy or aid policy. And finally, we want to strengthen PMU as an advocacy actor in different forums, including within and together with the Global Pentecostal Network. And in the Compass, you can read more about advocacy on page 26. And you are also free to contact me if you have other questions about how we work with advocacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to remind you that if you have questions or comments, you are so welcome to write it in the chat, and we will try to answer these questions or at least comment on them. So if you have questions or comments on the Compass or what was said, please share it in the chat and we will try to bring it up. Now, Johanna, welcome. Sorry. Johanna Litzgård-Leborn, you are heading our communications and fundraising departments. And we have spoken a lot the last few years on the importance of understanding what it means that we are belonging to a movement.
Yeah.
We are not just an office in Alvik, Stockholm, but we are belonging to a movement and we can do a lot together.
Mm.
So please share with us what is important in our strategic plan when it comes to your field of work.
Thank you very much. My name is Johanna, and I work as head of communication and fundraising, as Niklas told you. And I have met some of you live, but I also met a lot of you on digital platforms like today. During my minutes, I will focus on our priority goals around communication and some of the themes expressed in the Compass. PMU is an important agent in promoting international solidarity in Sweden, especially ensuring that the perspectives and voices of our local partners, you and our target groups in our 32 countries that we work in, reach PMU's target groups in Sweden. Let me give you some examples here. PMU aims its communication activities in Sweden at the Swedish public, of course, and in particular to the target groups that we meet in our network within the Swedish Pentecostal movement. As Niklas told you, this is a very important group that we really would like to work very closely with. And we've done it for many years and we want to do it even more. So both those who are already engaged in global issues and those who are not as familiar with them yet, though. We also want to reach teachers and students in schools through our school package that some of you have been involved in. We've been traveling all over the world to gather content that we could provide into schools that we can actually see also. It's really making a huge impact, which is really, really interesting. To build awareness about global challenges, PMU's work, and the 2030 agenda. We have a very large group that we meet every week in our second-hand shops. Employees, volunteers, and not least customers. A very good way to meet the public and also a very good arena to shed light on sustainability issues and the environment. We also work on broad front on media communications, highlighting PMU's prioritized issues through various media channels. For instance, in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to be involved in a big gala that's going to be on primetime in Swedish television. And we just recently visited Togo, and that is going to be aired on primetime Friday night. So that is just one example how we work with the media. And also, in order to raise awareness among journalists as well as the public, and to promote and maintain a more favorable attitude towards aid among the Swedish public. Our goal is that together with you, increase knowledge among our target groups in Sweden, that in the long run will empower PMU as an advocacy and development actor, as Christine told you. PMU's communication activities also enable our partners' voices to be heard in the debate and create a greater understanding of various global challenges. So I would like to end this with just thanking you all of the partners that we've been traveling to, the partners that we can meet digital, and also all the partners that we have here in Sweden, that we can work together to raise awareness about what we're doing together in the work. So thank you for your participation and all the stories that you provide us with that shows the great work in building a better world together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Johanna. I'm not sure if there are any questions brought up in the chat. Seems like it's all very clear to you what we are doing. Yeah. So if there will be questions, of course, we are here. So you're always welcome to contact us and comment and give instructions or ask questions on what we did and why. Before we end this part of this webinar, I just want to say a few words on the implementation of that compass that we now have been described briefly, but we have tried to shed light on the things that we find very important. We develop annual plans in order to ensure that the compass is implemented. We also, like as Michael said, we also have staff that work daily with our prioritized thematic areas. As I said earlier, it doesn't mean that we don't work with other things. We work with many different initiatives around the world and in Sweden, as you just heard. But we believe that those three thematic areas, we need to build capacity within ourselves. We need to have dialogue with the Swedish churches and with you as local partners. When it comes to gender equality, how to build peace, and also how to react on the climate change that is so evident to many of us even this year. To an increasing extent, we have said in the compass that we will direct funds towards interventions targeting our chosen priorities. Of course, based on dialogue with you, our network. We decide together, and I want to highlight that this is also mentioned in the compass, that we do this, we are well aware that vulnerability and poverty, as well as solutions, have to be understood from a local setting. So we don't try to push people here, but we have a strong belief that we need to work on these three thematic areas. We will also focus our capacity building on those three thematic areas. We do a lot of other things, but this is our core focus. When it comes to funding mechanisms, we will discuss further on with all of you for the next period of funding that we will need to look into the mechanisms. We have been used to working in projects, but we are increasingly trying to direct more funding to programs, broader programs, but we will also need to discuss what is called core support. So other types of funding will need to be discussed together as we move on. We've also discussed a lot on our geographical focus, and it is by the end of the compass you can read about what we say. We focus on the least developed countries according to the OECD list. And if you go through the projections on world poverty, Sub-Saharan Africa is the continent where most of the people in deep poverty will be in 2030. So that is both because of the poverty situation, but also because of the way world population grows. So funds will be allocated these years to themes and places where we believe that we together as a network can really make a change, and where we can mobilize people for change. I think Anna-Maria mentioned innovation, and this is something that we also have been discussing a lot. How do we make room for innovation together? And this is something that we mentioned that we want to do, and we want to do it together with you. And that might mean that we also supplement the portfolios of partners in some places in order to bring in thematic expertise, for example. We acknowledge in our compass the importance of working in broad networks with governments, with civil society, with faith-based actors, but also with academia. And we believe that this is very important. We find it finally crucial to reduce our climate footprints. And that's why we try to invest in these kind of webinars as well, and other forms of digital meetings with you as partners and Swedish churches, so that we can build things together, sometimes without traveling. I want to that would be the final thing to say about the compass. But again, if there are any questions or comments you want to bring up, please share them in the chat right now. And Eva, are there any? A question coming up from Juvi from Philippines. So the question is, can we together create platforms where we can deepen the dialogue on how to find solutions to common problems, things that we share? Was that the question, Eva? So that is the good thing that we will bring with us. How can we continue to, I think you mean, Juvi, a digital platform or digital platforms. Of course, we can also have physical ones, but we will for sure bring that with us. And try to find good solutions where we can meet together. Of course, we also want interaction, not only one-way communication like today.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was the compass of PMU, our 5-year strategic plan. You have listened to some different voices from the staff here. I want to give you a couple of minutes, a short break, to stand up, to go and get a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. And then we will share a few more things, information from our side as PMU about the upcoming partnership consultations next year, and also about some reorganization that we are working on at PMU in order to be even more effective in how we do things. So let's pause for a couple of minutes, and then we will get back again. So thank you for following. And if you have questions on communications or fundraising or advocacy or anything, please feel to contact Joanna, Christine, Anna-Maria, your desk officers, head of program Leif, or me, or Michael. We are here to serve and to do whatever we can to support. There was one interesting question on how to increase our voice as a network. And I just want to say, I mean, this is something we work a lot on, also together, as Christine mentioned, together with our global network of Pentecostal movements. We think that we have things to say, we think we have stories to share together. And we would like to strengthen that work together, both with the Swedish churches and with you as local networks and partners. We think that we have a voice that needs to be heard. So we will make sure that we answer your questions in the chat. Don't worry about that. Leif, welcome back. We want to give some brief information to all of you, and it will be on two things: partnership consultations next fall, what we used to call Building the Kingdom of God Together, and then we called it PPS, Program Planning Seminars. We have, as PMU, we have been working with partnership consultations since 1999. So it's a long history we have of those kind of meeting places. And in the fall of 2022, it's happening again, and you will soon receive information on dates for different regions, but also on locations. So we are working on that, but there will be 4 strategic meeting places, regional ones, physical ones, not digital ones, next fall, August, September, October, and November. 5 days in each region, as before. Many of you have taken place and you know the setup. I just want to mention that the focus is partnership dialogue, strategic dialogues on PMU's priorities, and the intersection between faith and rights, but also a deepened dialogue on the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, and what role we play together in doing something. Of course, we also want to bring up what was mentioned here in the chat. How can we increase our joint voice when it comes to advocacy and communications? How can our communications department in Sweden work even more closely, both with Swedish churches and with local partners, to make sure that the voices of the people in vulnerability are heard where they should be heard? We will, as I mentioned before, also discuss this support models. I mean, core support, program support, and project support. Connected to what we aim to do in the society, we also need to reflect all the time on our inner lives as churches and organizations. I mean, issues like internal democracy, what it looks like when it comes to gender equality within our own organizations, anti-corruption policies, and all these kind of things. How do we make sure that we are salt and light from within so that we do things in the community? So Leif,
yes,
what people are going to be invited, and a few things about the practical things, and the planning process ahead.
Right. Yes, of course, we want to start this well ahead of time because we know that there is a long startup process. And I think you will recognize the setup to a large extent, actually. The plan is to invite 3 representatives from each partner. It's there we also want to say that we want a good balance between women and men. And we are also looking at how to involve young people. We'll come back to that, but we also think that youth and young people are very important, that their voices are listened to as well. But three representatives from each partner. And of course, Swedish church partners will also be invited. There might also be observers. You will know that before we've also had invited certain organizations that are observers. It depends a bit on available funding, but if so, it's going to be one representative from each observer organization. This whole process should be seen in the light of us also developing a new program proposal and preparing for a new program period from 2024, because we are handing in a new proposal to SIDA, or the Swedish Mission, through the Swedish Mission Council in May 2023 for 2024 onwards. And early next year, we will communicate with you as partners and with partner churches on possible funding, what we foresee for the next period. And the next step will also be that proposals will be handed in to PMU late 2022. So the seminars should also be seen in light with that, just as you said, Niklas, that we will also be discussing issues around program funding, for instance, and core funding and things like that. I think it's also, unfortunately, it's important to mention that we are also facing a general trend of limitation of funding, and SIDA has indicated to SMC, they, by the way, just handed in a new 5-year proposal to SIDA, that there might be decreased funding for the coming years. And we, together with other civil society organizations in Sweden, are actually advocating hard for increased funding for civil society, because we think it's crucial, actually, that there is a lot of funding, especially in the light of what's happening in the world around us, with, for instance, shrinking space for civil society and decreased democratic space and so forth. Anyway, it's also important to add that the compass will be central, of course, in this discussion. And I previously worked for the biggest Swedish environmental organization in Sweden, and I just want to emphasize the importance of climate and environment, which is not a new area, as Michael was saying, but we are putting more emphasis into that. So that will be one important theme in our discussions when we meet next year. And maybe also to add that, linked to the issue of program funding and the issue of more combined funding to partners, we will also be asking you for your strategic plans in advance before we meet. But as you said, Niklas, more written information will follow, and so you don't need to worry. We will soon be coming back to you in writing as well with more details.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that will be a great opportunity to meet again after a long time of maybe not this connection, but at least we only met digitally, most of us. So that will be a great thing. Yes, the last thing we wanted to inform you about is that we also have been working for some months, or from the start of the year almost, with how to be organized as PMU in order to be effective in our support to the work that you are doing in the countries where we are, and how to be organized in order to be effective in also working with the things we do in Sweden. So we have been going through and looking through some parts of organization, and the main thing has been on the program side. Yes. How to be organized when it comes to our desk officers, staff on that side of the organization. So I want to leave the floor to you again, Leif, to say something about you have been heading this process. Yes, so welcome to say something on that.
Yeah, very briefly, just to inform you. I think from the outset, it's important to say, I don't think this will really have a great impact on our relationship with you and the work with partners. It's more how we as organization try to set up our structure in a clear structure that supports the work and supports the vision of reaching the poorest. So the objective has been really to create a clear and simple program structure, and also internally for us to create a better work environment with clear roles, clear decision-making structures and mandates. We also want to create an organization structure that is adapted to our geographical priorities, possible growth, etc. So what is changing? We will change from previously 6 geographic regions into 3. And that means that we will organize the work around, we could call it English-speaking Africa, that is Eastern, Southern, and Africa and the Horn of Africa. And French-speaking Africa, which is a merger then between Central Africa and West Africa. And finally, a region which consists of Middle East, Northern Africa, and Asia. And in each of those regions, we will be recruiting, and that is mainly through internal recruitment, because this is not a process of any layoffs of staff or anything. It's more how we organize the work internally. We will be recruiting regional managers for these 3 regions that will have more of a mandate to lead and take decisions within that region, those 3 regions that I just mentioned. A decision on this change was taken by the management team of PMU in June 2021, a few months ago, and we are now in the process of preparing and planning for an implementation of this from 1st of January next year. So the plan is that from 1st of January 2022, we will be launching this new structure with 3 regions instead of previously 6. I think that is really what I can say, Niklas. So mainly an internal process, even though you might have some new people to relate to as a result of this change of our internal structure.
And maybe just a clarification when it comes to the connection to the partnership seminars next fall, they will be 4.
Yes.
Like before, there will be 1 for Middle East, North Africa, there will be 1 for Asia, there will be 1 for French-speaking Africa, and 1 for English-speaking Africa. Good. There was one question maybe in the chat that we could comment on. There are other questions as well, but they will be dealt with partner by partner. But there was one question on what was said on the connections to the Pentecostal movement in the way we work and the way we do things. So in Sweden, that was in Sweden, I thought it was globally, because that's also a process we are in, trying to get more church movements within our global movement to be active in justice. But in Sweden, we try to work in very close collaboration with you churches here, because we believe that we together are better than if we are working apart. We think that we can do things together that we cannot do by ourselves. So for example, in the work in Sweden on communications and fundraising, we try to develop new ways of thinking together with churches. How can we make sure that we use, I mean, it's a benefit we have that we are situated, we have 440 churches within our movement around in Sweden. How can we make sure that we are present with good communication and fundraising for what we want to do locally, not only in Alvik, Stockholm? So those connections and models for working together are being developed, and we try to learn as we move on. And we have actually focused a lot on the dialogue with the churches this year to meet in regions and discuss how this could be done in a good way. But of course, also in the work in the field, in the projects, many times we stand in very long-term relationships. In some places, it could be up to 100 years of relationships. And of course, those partnerships are carried by you as churches in Sweden. and we are part of the picture, but we could never replace the church in those partnerships. So we play different roles, and we need to help each other to understand both the very informal partnership we have, where we are all brothers and sisters, and the formal partnership we have. Leif said that we are a formal organization, but we try to connect also to informal networks. So we need to understand both those levels of partnership as we develop the work, but we are in this together. And we often speak about the three-party agreements we have with churches in Sweden and partners. Yeah, I think that was a comment on that question. It was from Nashat in Palestine. Thank you, Nashat, for the question. I think by that, we are done for today. We are so happy that we have 100 people joining us from all over. Maybe some could not really follow because they were not allowed to come in because of a limited number of people that could join. But we have had 100 people joining us. So thank you for being with us. Thank you, Tamar, who had been translating all this session. Great work. Maybe all of you are here. If you could join me behind the camera now, make sure that we could wave at you and say goodbye. And why don't you put on your camera, all of you, so that we can all be seen? Does that work, Michael? So then that not we are the only ones being seen. Waving or clapping, or I don't know. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. Take care. God bless you all.